G'day guys, thanks for watching as always. First of all, Merry Christmas to everyone. It's the time of the year again. Santa's already been pretty good to me because I got 2 new baits for Secret Santa. So thank you very much, Santa. You know who you are. So I received 2 Lunkerhunt Yappa Frogs. They were fairly recently released bait. I think it was this year in summer or something along those lines. When I saw them in the shop, they immediately caught my eye because they got that jitterbug mouth. It's actually a soft mouth. But I've read a couple of reviews online, and there was a couple of people that had issues with them for not doing the jitterbug walk. So we're going to try and fix that in this video. That'll be later on. First we'll just do a quick review of them. Now, since I haven't bought them, I don't know the exact retail price, but I'll have that somewhere over here on the screen. First thing that you know is obviously the jitterbug mouth. They're actually soft, which is quite good because that prevents any tear on the soft rubber on the side. Kind of like your standard Lunkerhunt frog, other than the detail that they've put into it. And also something that you notice is that the skirts are much shorter. Usually they leave the skirts a fair bit longer in your standard walking frogs. But they've reduced the size of this, and I'm assuming that it has to do with a lesser drag in the water so that the action of the jitterbug comes through better. Now, this one I've taken hooks out of for good reason. We'll do that. We'll go over that a little bit later. But I have had them tested in the pool. Now, the issue that some people have with these lures, or baits, whatever you want to call it, is that they don't get them to walk like a jitterbug. I did get them to walk in the pool. What I did notice is that you have to have your rod tip in a certain angle. You have to be winding at a certain speed as well. And it doesn't do very well with waves. And this all comes from the fact, what I think, is that this lure is a little bit too stable at this point. What you'll see is that the attachment point is here on the nose, and it sits quite high from the rest of the jitterbug. So for jitterbug lip, sorry. So in order for this to be catching the water that it really should be sitting on an angle like this, and therefore the toe point's quite unnatural. The angle in which you have to hold your rod is quite high. That will cause the nose to come up, and that will actually that is when the bait will start catching water and actually wiggle from side to side. So that automatically brings us to the conclusion of what we might have to do to make this lure better. But I'd like to go over any of the additional features. It has Lunkerhunt on the belly. They all come with a pretty similar color on the belly, so obviously the whole color scheme is not going to make too much of a difference. The hooks are okay, they're sharp, but if you would want to upgrade them, obviously there's some high-end Japanese hook brands that do sell frog hooks separately. Taking the hook out and putting it back in is quite easy. You can just separate the ring from the hook like so, take it off. If you do buy a packet of new hooks, you can just put it on the opposite way, and you could technically just thread some line. What probably would be easiest is through the nose, out of the rear, and kind of go from there and push it back in, and that should be easy enough. That being said, I think I'll show you a quick video of how to swim in the pool without any adjustments. I'll show you that right now. Alrighty, so here you see the retrieve of the frog straight out of the packet. On a steady retrieve, it doesn't do a whole lot. But you'll notice that once the frog actually makes it pretty close to where I'm standing, you'll see that it starts to wiggle from side to side. And that has everything to do with the angle of the line. If you want that action to actually be imparted in the lure over the whole cast, over the whole distance that you cast, sorry, you're going to have to hold your rod tip pretty high, as I said before. You'll see that here it starts to wiggle just as it is about to be lifted out of the water. So that was something that we're going to have to change. Obviously, when you're frog fishing, it's beneficial to keep your tip low, because once the frog gets taken by the bass, you want to have a really solid hook set, and having your rod tip up high in the air is going to be a bit of a difficulty. So that's one of the points of critique, I guess. Here you see a really quick retrieve with the tip up high. Then that frog does swim over the whole distance, but the pool is not that long, so obviously if you're going to make a longer cast in a real life fishing situation, it might still be pretty difficult to get that action imparted right at the beginning of the cast. Here you see what it looks like with a tip high, fast retrieve. It is quite a good action, but we'd like to have that action at a slower pace and with a lower rod tip as well. So we'll kind of go from there. So as you can see, you can kind of need a pretty steady high-speed retrieve while your rod tip is in a certain angle. I have tried out various knots, and I didn't see a whole lot of difference with loop knots versus just straight tying them onto the attachment point that slips all the way down. That didn't make a whole lot of difference. So angle is really important. Now, the idea of fixing this is to obviously lower the attachment point from the tip of the nose towards the cup of the mouth, so that when we pull it, it automatically lowers the bait, or actually raises the nose of the bait, and it starts wiggling. Also, what we noticed when we retrieved the lure and it did swim, the speed was quite high, and ideally with frogs, I'd like to walk them or swim them very slow near lily pads and really pause them in the pockets of the lily pads, or even swim them very slow in the pockets of the lily pads. And you pretty much won't get any wiggling action on a slow retrieve with this one. You can walk these very well. They swim really well from side to side thanks to the cut mouth, but that's not why they have these big lips. So let's see if we can improve that. And this is going to be a bit of a trial and error thing, but we're going to try that right now. Alrighty, so here I've actually taken the hooks out, and you obviously see that's where the actual attachment point is, right on the top of the mouth there. Now I was going to try and find something to use as a interchangeable attachment point. I've got this little box that I carry all these pieces of wire in. What it kind of came down to is I still had some Texas hooks, some worm hooks in that little box, and I ended up using a smaller size. You'll see that in a bit. Now, as I said, it was going to be a little bit of a trial and error. I wanted to see what I could get away, so I started with an attachment point right in the middle of the cup, which worked okay. Then I lowered it further and further. What I noticed is that the lure is too light to be catching water when the attachment point is all the way at the bottom of the cup. It basically just skips over the water, doesn't catch anything in the mouth. So we were going to have a bit of an intermediate attachment point. So here you see me just put the big old worm hook in. That wasn't going to be fitting very well, so I ended up using a smaller one. But that was going to be the attachment point. Either way, before I'm going to show you exactly how it worked out, I wanted to note a couple of things. I tried a couple of different attachment points, so there's going to be a couple of gaps in the cup there. We're just going to fill that up with super glue. Also, I'm going to directly show you exactly which attachment point worked best, so you don't have to go try it out. Here you see me put through the original hooks through the best attachment point that we had. It's actually quite simple, but if it's a little bit difficult, you can thread some fishing line through from the attachment point that you've decided on and through the rear, and then you can just pull those hooks through. That's not a problem. In a bit I'll show you actually the easiest way to change them straight out of the packet. It literally takes a couple of seconds and you're done. Either way, I'm filling up all the gaps at the front here. One thing that will be the demise of this lure is if it holds too much water in the belly, it'll be too heavy for it to have a wiggling action. So Yeah, make sure that all those gaps are filled up except for the exit hook. There has to be one slit out of which air can escape, so when the fish bites and you set the hook, the lure will actually flatten. If there's no exit, it'll be impossible for that lure to flatten. That's not what you want. So kind of go from here. That all works fine. Making sure that the super glue dries up, and then she's ready to go. I'll show you what the end result was once this was all fixed up. So here we're ready to test it at the pool. This ended up being the best attachment point. It's about 8 millimeters under the original attachment point. Works a treat. You'll see that right here. Straight from the cast. This is with the tip low. It immediately starts wiggling. It's much more sensitive to the wiggling action now because we have destabilized it a little bit. It kind of means that the lure is more prone to spinning, but it still prevents it from spinning because that attachment point is still up high enough to keep it stable enough. I know it sounds way more difficult than it technically is. It's kind of playing with the window of allowance of what that bait allows you to do. Either way, just to simplify it, 8 millimeters on the original attachment point. Works a treat. This works really well. Perfect lure. Wiggles every time. One thing I did notice in the promotion video from Lunkerhunt was that when the lure does show its action, they're right behind the boat, and the line sits in a really high angle, which obviously is a bit of a giveaway of what the lures are going to be like on a longer cast. Then just not going to work. So, having said that, here you see immediately that wiggle starts working. Very good action. Can pause it, and once you start it up again at whatever speed, it starts wiggling again. So that's exactly what we wanted. Quite happy with being able to figure that one out, and I'm sure this lure is going to be a killer over in summer. Quite confident. Can't wait to use it. Alright guys, just real quick, when it comes straight out of the box, all you really have to do is just pop the connection eye into the lure and make a little gap as to where you want the connection eye to be popping out, which ideally would be 8 millimeters under the original attachment gap. And all you have to do is then pop the attachment ring out again, put some super glue around it, fix up the hole out of which the original attachment ring was popping with super glue as well, to prevent any water from coming in through the front, and you're pretty much ready to go. As I said before, don't put any super glue where the hooks exit the body, because you do want to have a gap out of which air can escape, so the lure will flatten during the bite. That would be about it. Alrighty guys, well in the meantime that's all dried up, and I think they're ready to go. Won't be using them anytime soon, kind of have to wait for the weather to warm up. I'm assuming there is some situation that you can still catch some bass on surface here in Texas, but they're going to be very limited. I'm not going to try that hard, so we'll wait for spring to arrive and kind of go from there. I hope that helped guys. If you have any questions, obviously let me know. Final verdict on these frogs. Since they retail for $8.99 and we were able to get a very good action out of it, I think the effectiveness of these frogs with their action and the fact that they're obviously weedless, they seem like a really good buy. They do kind of remind me of two other top boarders. I think Molex make a top boarder that's called the Super NATO Beetle. Quite similar. It's got some paddles at the front, bit of a different design, doesn't have any skirts, but I'm sure that one works pretty good too. But that one retails for $13.99. Then you have the Debs Bazariski, very good frog, more than twice expensive as these Lunkerhunt frogs, and that actually has two paddles at the back, but also a very useful frog. So I think they're all pretty well useful for the same scenarios. I heard the Debs Buzz Risky is a very, very good frog. At the same time, they're around $20, so you pay more than twice as much money for them. So either way, I hope that's enough information to make up your mind to go try them out. And if you've already bought them and you haven't been able to swim properly, I hope the information of adjusting them helps. So thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. I hope Santa's going to give you plenty of tackle. And until next time, cheers.